Birthdays never meant much to me. Not since my mother died. What once was a day of cake and laughter, of warmth and her gentle voice humming happy birthday, off-key, had become nothing more than a painful reminder. A date etched into the calendar that felt like a cruel joke. Since that night, the night everything changed, every candle I blew out wasn't a celebration. It was a quiet cry, a scream trapped behind my ribs. Every wish I made as the flames flickered felt useless, like tossing pebbles into an ocean and hoping for a ripple. Wishes didn't come true. Not for people like me. So I learned how to perform. To wear the smile, to thank the people who remembered, to laugh at the jokes made in the break room or respond politely to birthday texts from old classmates who had no idea how hollow this day really felt. My coworkers would surprise me with cupcakes, my friends with cheerful emojis and phone calls, and I'd nod along, pretending it didn't hurt. Pretending it didn't feel like I was standing alone in the middle of a room filled with noise I couldn't connect to. Because how do you explain to someone that the day you were born feels like the beginning of a curse? They didn't know the truth. They didn't know that birthdays for me had died with her. That the magic had left the room the moment her heart stopped beating. That her smile, her laugh, her presence, she had been the reason it meant anything at all. And when she was gone, so was the joy. But this year was different. It wasn't louder. It wasn't happier. It was quieter, emptier if possible, until his name appeared on my screen. My father. The ghost I'd spent years resenting, hating, needing, forgetting, and remembering, all at once. The man who disappeared without a word the night my mother died. He didn't just walk out of our house. He walked out of my life. No funeral. No goodbye. No explanation. Just gone. I remember waiting for him at the funeral, believing that maybe he was just late. That maybe grief had paralyzed him and he'd walk through those church doors any minute, take my hand and break down beside me. But he never came. His absence became permanent, like dust that settles in a room that no one dares to clean. Years passed. I grew up. He didn't show up for anything. Not birthdays, not graduations, not even hospital visits. He became a name I refused to say, a number I deleted more times than I could count. I remembered him, even if I didn't want to. So when I saw his name flash on my screen, on my birthday of all days, my entire world stopped. I froze. My thumb hovered above the notification, my stomach twisting itself into knots. My heart pounded so violently I could hear it in my ears. After all these years, why now? Was this it? The moment I had imagined so many times in the dark? The apology? The acknowledgement? The closure? My hands were trembling as I opened the message. My breath was shallow. My mind raced through every possible scenario. Was he sick? Was he sorry? Did he want to reconnect? Was there something left of the man I once looked up to? But then I read the words. What if it had been you who died that night instead of my wife? How much better that would have been. Time didn't just stop, it shattered. It was as if someone had cracked the sky open and everything inside me went still. The air in the room vanished. The light dimmed. The ground beneath me didn't feel real. I just stared at the screen, blinking, rereading, hoping that I was hallucinating. That maybe it was a wrong number. A cruel prank. Someone else using his phone. A mistake. Anything but the truth it clearly was. But it wasn't a mistake. It was intentional. Deliberate. Meant for me. He hadn't reached out to apologize. He hadn't messaged to reconnect. He had messaged to hurt me. To take whatever pieces of me had been left intact and crush them under the weight of his hatred. The father I had once prayed would come back had finally spoken, and his message was the coldest thing I'd ever read. The night my mother died was a locked box in my mind, sealed tight, rusted at the hinges, never opened. It was the one chapter of my life I never allowed myself to revisit, not fully. I had learned to keep it hidden behind practiced smiles and half-truths. Not because I didn't remember, but because I remembered too much. We had just finished a late dinner. I was still a child, old enough to understand joy, too young to understand that it doesn't last. It had been one of those rare nights when things felt almost whole. My mother had been radiant that evening, laughing at something ridiculous I'd said, her hand resting on my father's arm like she still believed there was warmth there. She had this way of making any room feel lighter, like the world bent toward her just to hear her laugh. It was raining when we left the restaurant. Not a drizzle. A storm, the kind that made the streets blur into rivers, the kind that turned headlights into smears of light and glass. I remember the windshield wipers fighting for their lives, the rhythmic squeal they made as they cleared the water over and over again, almost hypnotic. I was in the back seat, leaning against the window, humming something, some pop song I can't remember now. I felt safe. I felt full. My mother was laughing at something I'd said. My father said nothing as always. He had become a man of long silences and colder glances. A man who watched rather than lived. Still, there was peace in that car. For once, it felt like maybe, just maybe, things were okay. And then it happened. It didn't feel real. It felt like a bad dream folding in on itself. A truck. Out of nowhere. Barreling toward us like a nightmare with headlights. There was no time to scream. No time to brace. Just the sound of shattering glass, twisting metal, and my mother's sudden, breathless gasp. Then, darkness. A void so complete it felt like the universe had been sucked into it. When I opened my eyes, I was in a hospital room. The sterile white lights. The steady beeping of machines. My arm was in a cast. My head ached with the weight of impact and medication. Nurses moved in and out like shadows, faces I couldn't remember. I was told I had a concussion. A few broken bones. But I was alive. She wasn't. My mother had died on impact. Just gone. Her laughter silenced in an instant. And my father? He was barely scratched. Not even a bruise on his face. Not even a bandage. But what hurt more than any wound, more than any broken bone, was that he never came to see me. Not once. Not during my recovery. Not even to sit in the same room. It was as if I had vanished from his world, like I was the wreckage he was too ashamed to acknowledge. At the funeral he stood there, stiff and unreadable, refusing to meet my eyes. He didn't speak to me. Didn't hold my hand. Didn't cry. He was a ghost wearing his own skin. And after the service he was gone. No goodbye. No explanation. Just silence, the same silence I had learned to live in ever since. For years I told myself stories to survive. Maybe he was grieving in his own way. Maybe seeing me reminded him too much of her. Maybe his pain had made him retreat. I clung to these fragile maybes because the truth, that he had abandoned me, was too unbearable to accept. Till now. Now I understood. His message wasn't a mistake. It wasn't drunken cruelty or a moment of anger. It was deliberate. It was calculated. It was the truth. All these years the silence wasn't grief. It was contempt. He blamed me. Somewhere in that dark, twisted place inside him, he believed that the universe had made a mistake. That it should have been me. That my life wasn't just lesser than hers. It was the wrong one to save. And now, on my birthday of all days, he didn't just reopen the wound. He twisted the knife. I tried to bury the message. I told myself it was just a moment of madness. A flash of cruelty that didn't deserve space in my mind. I deleted it from my phone, erased the screen, but I couldn't erase it from my thoughts. It haunted me, not like a scream, but like a whisper that never left. It followed me into silence, into sleep, into every crack of stillness that life offered. I heard it in the click of a turning doorknob, in the hum of the refrigerator, in the middle of meaningless conversations. I'd look at myself in the mirror and see not just the face of a man, but the weight of a sentence branded into his skin. What if it had been you who died that night? It echoed, not just in my ears, but in my bones. I couldn't outrun it. I couldn't silence it. So finally, I did the only thing that made any sense. I went looking for answers. I wasn't sure what I was hoping to find. An explanation, maybe. A crack in the foundation of his cruelty. Something human behind the inhuman words. Closure, or maybe confirmation that he truly was as cold as his message had suggested. It didn't take long. He wasn't hiding. Just gone. 3 states over. A beautiful neighborhood. A street lined with trimmed hedges, new pavement, fresh flowers in the windowsills. I found him living a life that didn't seem to have room for ghosts like me. Big house. White porch. A silver SUV parked neatly in the driveway. A garden swing that creaked in the breeze. He had a new family. A wife with warm eyes. 2 young children. One of them chasing the other through the yard with a toy sword. Their laughter rose into the air like a melody I wasn't part of. And him, the man who had vanished from my world without a goodbye, he was laughing, smiling. Oh, I didn't cross the street. I didn't yell. I didn't ring the doorbell or demand an explanation. I just stood there watching. Watching how easy it was for him to erase me. Watching how freely he gave love to those children. How naturally he wrapped his arms around them. A kind of love I had once begged for. Starved for. And I wondered, did he ever think of me when he held them? Did he feel guilt, shame, even the faintest echo of the child he'd left behind? But just when I thought I'd seen enough, something caught my eye. A small table on the porch. A photo frame. I squinted. Stepped forward slightly. My heart stuttered. It was her. My mother. Not his current wife. Not a family photo. Just her, alone, smiling in a picture I thought was long lost to memory. A snapshot frozen in time, sitting casually on a porch table like it belonged there. There were no candles. No flowers. It wasn't a shrine. It wasn't even treated with reverence. It was just there. And that told me everything. He hadn't moved on. Not really. That house, that family, the new life, they were walls built around a grief that had never healed. A cover story told to everyone, maybe even to himself. But that photo, it betrayed him. It told the real story. He was still stuck. Trapped in a night he couldn't outrun. In guilt he couldn't admit. In pain he refused to confront. And I had become the scapegoat. Not because I was guilty, but because I was the last remaining piece of that night. He saw her in me. He saw the accident. He saw everything he failed to protect. And instead of facing that truth, he chose to hate me. I sat on the porch swing of our old house that night. The house where everything had once made sense and then suddenly didn't. I hadn't been back in almost a decade. Life had changed. I had changed. But as I stepped through the front gate onto the worn wooden boards of the porch, it felt like the past had been waiting for me. The swing creaked as I sat down, its familiar rhythm swaying beneath me like a heartbeat from another life. The neighborhood had moved on, evolved, but the house still whispered her name. I closed my eyes and the memories came rushing in. Not as flashes but as waves, fierce and tender. Her laughter echoing from the kitchen as she danced with a spatula. The way she used to brush my shoulder with her hand while passing me breakfast, humming some old tune under her breath. The smell of her perfume, warm, floral, unforgettable, still lingered in the corners of my mind. Like she had only just walked out the door, like she might return at any moment. My chest ached, the kind of ache that never fully leaves. Grief isn't loud. It's quiet. A steady, dull throb that lives just beneath the surface. And then I did something I hadn't done in years. I picked up my phone, opened a blank message, and I wrote back. I got your message. And for a long time I believed you were right. I believed I should have died that night. That maybe the world would have been better if I had. But then I remembered the way Mom held my hand after nightmares, how she taught me to cook, how she never once made me feel like I wasn't enough. She never would have wanted you to say that to me. She never would have wanted you to carry this kind of hate in your heart. So maybe it's not me who died that night. Maybe it's you. The version of you she loved. I hope one day you find him again. But I won't let your grief define my worth anymore. I lived. And I'm going to keep living. I didn't send it. Because it wasn't for him. It was never really about him. It was for me. To take back my voice. To reclaim something he had tried to silence for years. It was a message to the little boy who once sat at this very window, waiting for a father who never came back. I stood up and took one last look at the house. The light in the upstairs window was off now, but in my mind it was still on. I saw her there, waving like she used to, her silhouette framed by yellow curtains and soft light. For a moment I waved back. And this time I smiled. Not because I was healed. Not because everything was okay. But because, for the first time in my life, I had chosen myself. Some wounds never close. Some questions never get answered. And some stories don't have happy endings. But healing isn't about erasing the pain. It's about carrying it and still walking forward. It's about learning that your survival isn't something to be ashamed of. Something to be proud of. If this story touched your heart, if it made you feel seen, or reminded you that even in the darkness you're not alone, tap that like button. And if you're ready for more stories that dig deep into life's hardest truths, and still find the light, subscribe to the channel. Because the journey doesn't end here. Thanks for being here. I'll see you in the next one. And until then, keep living. Keep choosing yourself. You matter.